Hi, I'm Ed Caffrey. What I'm going to attempt to show in this short video is how I fit up a guard. First and foremost, in my opinion, it's about designing your knife so that you can fit up the guard as easily as possible. If you'll notice this knife blade, what we have here is just one of my typical hunters. This one happens to be a laminated Damascus blade with a hidden tang. I've already squared up the shoulders, made those nice and even. One of the things I want to show you about these knives is when I build a knife, from forging all the way through finishing, if you notice, nothing is completely flat. Now let me restate that. Basically, this knife is an elongated diamond. The thickest portion of this blade is going to be right in front of where I stamp my name in the blade, and then from there forward it tapers, from there back it tapers. What that does is that actually allows me to create a guard that will fit on in a press fit manner, and that as I press it on, it grows tighter and tighter. This is how I get real organic looks on my guards. The guard material we're going to be using is nothing more than a piece of bronze. What I've done is, if you'll notice, this is the back side of the guard. What I've done is I've taken a 1/4 inch end mill and I've milled out all but about an 1/8 inch thick of web. And then on the front side of that, I've milled out an 1/8 of an inch slot. Essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the hole in the guard just the reverse of what this blade is. The way that I do that is essentially make this hole tapered, with the front of this hole being the narrowest and back here being wider. I'll fit and file up until about, probably within 3/4, maybe a 1/2 inch of fitting up against the shoulders, and then I'll literally drive that guard in place. Since the bronze, nickel silver works also, so does brass, any other material that's softer than the tang of this knife, you can fit it on there, drive it on, and it'll deform to fit all of the minor contours of this blade, and if done correctly, it'll look literally like the blade is growing out of the guard. So anyway, let's get started. If you notice on this, there's some little edges that are cocked over, actually down on this end and again up here. That's where the 1/8 inch end mill, anytime you mill something, an end mill will do a slight walk towards the rotation. So sometimes you can get away with it, sometimes it doesn't. In this case it's irrelevant because we're going to file all this out to make it match anyway. What we do is we start out by putting in a vise. If you notice on this vise I've got micarta jaws put in it. Basically that's just to keep from marring anything up. My files are a little different too. What I've done is I've taken standard chainsaw file, the flat type, and I've actually put it on my surface grinder and I've milled it down to where it's just a hair less than an 1/8 of an inch thick, probably about 115 thousandths. I've also done that with a little rougher file. I've taken that one. If you notice, this side's slick. This is the side that was surface ground down, but these are the files that I use for filing out my guards. And finally, for detail work, I buy just a little 4-inch mill bastard file that's right at about 120 thousandths thick, so it's more than adequate to fit through a guard slot. So anyway, I'm going to start off. What I'm going to do is use the heavy tooth file, but when I put the file in, rather than trying to file flat, I'm going to file at an angle, because what I want to do is I want to create a tapered hole. Take some time and a little bit of practice, and you'll generally cut away a little bit on the back side of that guard on your way up to where you want to be. And each one of these files cut slightly different on different materials. This particular file does okay on this bronze, but now that I've got that hole opened up just enough, I'm going to go to this finer tooth file, and this file actually cuts better on this bronze. I'm not putting any pressure on my backstroke, basically going back and forth, trying to make sure that I get a nice, even takedown on that sides of this guard. And what I'll do is I'll take it out, take a look at it, I'll check it. You can see where I'm starting to move over this way on the guard. I really don't care about how this is whole centered up. Somebody may have noticed that. It's irrelevant to me simply because the way that I put this knife together is this is going to go on as a whole piece. All I'm concerned about is having it fit perfectly and having the front finish the way I want it to. Everything else will be glued on the tang of the knife, whether there be any spacers or whatever. Handle material, I'll glue it together and then I grind it down as a single unit. That's not the only way to do it, not necessarily the right way to do it, but it's Ed Caffrey's way of doing it. So anyway, I'll look at that. I'm kind of making sure that things are staying sort of parallel. And need to take a little bit more off down at the bottom. As you can see right now, we're fitting on about half, give or take. So back in the vise, I'm going to start on the opposite side. And as I said, what I'm doing is I'm creating this cut so it's at an angle. This is the front of my guard, this is the back of my guard, or what will be. I'm not too concerned about here, simply because the handle material, spacers, or whatever is back here is going to hide that. So, now we just start tapering the opposing side. And it's important to be kind of constant and be fairly accurate on taking the material off all the way across. And it also helps with a little bit of practice because that'll give you an eye to tell you whether things are staying parallel or whether you're getting a little of this or that. The way it looks right now, if you look at it, I've got, things are pretty straight, but I'm a little narrower on the bottom than I am up here. So what I do is I look, figure out my best solution, and in this case it's going to be going back to this side and filing on it a little bit more. So this is the opposite side again. I'm going to work a little bit more heavily. Basically I'm going to put pressure this way on the file. Okay, let's take a test fit. Pull that out. And that's about how far we're on it right now. What I normally do is I'll hold it up in this manner and look at it, look at the light that comes through here, and that's going to tell me where I'm hitting and where I'm missing and where I need to file a little bit more. The other thing you need to be conscious of is how this guard is going to fit on these shoulders. For example, when it comes up, if you notice, I always have my top shoulder a little forward of my bottom shoulder. I do that intentionally. The reason is that I want that guard to have a slight forward cock. If you try to put a guard on at a true, or what you would think would be a 90 degree, almost always, once you put the handle in place and get everything finished down, the guard will have this type of look to it. And that just totally ruins the profile of the knife. So anyway, one more test fit. A little bit of a look in the light.